Oh my god, it's so perfect. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's kind of been a minute since I uploaded. The last time I uploaded was May. I just haven't had the time. I've been really busy. So I'm sorry for the delay. Also, Taylor Swift was in town from June 1st to the 3rd, so that was a whole ordeal. I was trying to get tickets all weekend, and I still ended up going. I just didn't have tickets, but it was super fun. Anyways, I've been really busy. My boyfriend was on tour and he's the one who edits my videos, so been doing this too long. I haven't had a chance to film anything or edit anything, but I'm back with a May reading wrap up and I am super excited. I would say some of the books I've read in May are probably some of my favorite reads so far this year. So I read I read 6 books in May and I DNF'd a book, which we will get into. I think this was the second book I DNF'd so far this year. Also, I'm not going to show a June TBR because I feel like I haven't been sticking to my TBRs, and it's also my birth month, so I feel like I'm gonna be buying a lot of books this month and I'll probably just want to read a lot of the new books I buy. So yeah, I'm not gonna do a June TBR because it's already like 6 days into June, so I already did start reading a couple books and I already finished a book. So not doing a June TBR. I'm gonna show you a tiny haul instead because I've picked up a couple books in the past couple of weeks, so I'm gonna give you a tiny haul instead of a June TBR. Hopefully that's fine with you. I have my little stack of books I read in May right here. So the first book I read in May was Flawless by Elsie Silver. This is the first book in the Chestnut Spring series. It's like a small town romance series, and it's like found family. There's some characters that were in this book will be featured in the other books. Like I think the second book is brother of the main guy in this book, and then the third book is like a guy from their friend group, so it's kind of like found family. So this book, like I said, it's the first one in the series. Cowboy romance, so he's like a bull rider. I wouldn't say it's like enemies to lovers, but Rhett is the main guy in this book and he's a bull rider. Right off the bat, he doesn't like Summer because Summer works for her dad and her dad is kind of like the manager of Rhett, or he like works for Rhett. But Rhett has like a really bad reputation and he's getting into trouble, so they basically want to send someone to kind of like supervise him so he doesn't get himself into any more trouble while he's competing for the bull riding. So Summer is the daughter of whoever works for Rhett. I can't think of his name. Summer's dad sends Summer to stay with him for a period of time to basically supervise him, and Rhett basically is not into it because he thinks he's being babysat and he's a grown-ass man, so he's not into it, and he just immediately doesn't like Summer just because for those reasons. But slowly and surely he starts to get to know her. He's initially physically attracted to her and then starts to get to know her and things progress. So I would say it's kind of a slow burn, which I love slow burns. So I was like really enjoying this. Like I was really enjoying the build up, but then I feel like once they were actually together, it was just kind of, it fell flat for me and I was not that interested. I also thought the ending was a little bit predictable and a little bit cringe, but overall I was entertained. Yeah, I was entertained. I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty decent. I rated it 3 stars. I did enjoy this author's writing. I liked the build up, but like once, like I said, once they were like together, I was like, I don't know, I'm kind of bored. So yeah, I would say this was pretty decent. I would recommend it. I think I am going to continue to read the series. Let me know if, I know everyone and their mom is like talking about this series on YouTube, so I'm sure you've heard about it, but let me know if you've read any of the other books in the series and what your thoughts are. Second book I read in May is All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. I've talked about Mariana Zapata a billion times on my channel, probably like in every video I've filmed. I love her so much, and I honestly haven't heard a lot of people talk about this. This book is about Aurora, and it's about her going back to her hometown where she grew up. Small town, mountain vibes. Anyways, she hasn't been home in like since she was very young because something happened to her mom. Her mom ended up going missing because her mom was a hiker, and one day her mom went missing when she was very young and they never found her, and she was just pronounced dead. So since no one else could take care of Aurora, her uncle was giving custody to her, so she had to move to a whole different state, and she hasn't been home since she was very little, and that tragic thing happened with her mother. But one day she decides she wants to go back and just start over again, and she ends up finding this little like studio apartment that's being rented out that's on top of a garage. Decides to rent it, and she shows up, and so the male character in this book, his name is, she calls him Mr. Rhodes because that's his last name, and he just goes by Rhodes. She shows up. She was accepted to rent the studio apartment above this garage. When she shows up, Mr. Rhodes is like, what are you doing here? Who are you? I'm not renting out this studio apartment. I don't understand why you're here. And he's very angry. Turns out his son listed the studio apartment online to be rented out because he's trying to like make money to like fund his music career. He's like pretty young kid, say like he's like in his teens, early teens. So yeah, the dad is pretty pissed off, and he's like, there's no way you're staying here. I don't know why my son did that. She kind of explains her situation and is like, I have nowhere else to stay. I used to live here, blah blah blah. And he agrees and lets her stay for like a month, but then he's like, you need to get out and find something else after the month is up. They form a relationship, and she ends up staying longer than a month. So tropes in this book are, I would say it is like small town, slow burn. I don't know, would I say it's grumpy sunshine? I don't know. I wouldn't say it's necessarily grumpy sunshine, but Rhodes is like very standoffish, is cold to her initially because you find out in the book why he is that way, but I don't want to give it away. But basically, he's really standoffish, he's really cold to her, and like doesn't want anything to do with her. He just wants her to be in and out and not speak with him, and really good slow burn. Their relationship progresses very slowly, but it's so good. Oh, I really loved like the setting of this book. Like I said, it's like in Colorado or something like that, I believe. I was really able to picture the setting of the book because just the way Mariana Zapata explained it. I rated this 4 stars. I wrote in my book journal, I think I would have rated this 5 stars if it was dual point of view, which it wasn't. If I was able to see inside Rhodes' mind, I would have given it 5 stars. Also, this is like a single dad trope, so if you're into that. For Mariana Zapata, like literally like this much of the book is the build-up and they're not together, and then like this much of the book they are finally together. Personally, I like romances like that. I recommend anything by her. I think there's a few books I haven't read by her, but overall I've read a lot of her books and I've spoken about them in my other videos, so if you want to check those videos out and hear my opinion on her other books, you can do that. But probably one of my favorite reads so far this year. The next book I tried to read is Mile High by Liz Tomford. I've talked about this was on my TBR for this month, but I DNF'd it. I got pretty far into this book. I want to say like a little bit more than halfway, and I couldn't continue to read it. It wasn't the writing that I didn't like, it was the male character. Could not stand him. He was super cocky, and I did not like the first impression you get of him had the ick, like literally 3 pages in, and I just he couldn't win me over, and I couldn't figure, I'm like, how is she attracted to him? I did not like his personality at all. Overall, the writing was like fine, nothing like super groundbreaking, but it was just him I could not get past, and I had to stop reading. And I also got bored. I was just like, I'm not invested in these characters or the storyline, so I just DNF'd it. I did hear that like this book is not the best. There's like a second book, like a companion novel to this book. The second book follows the girl in this book's brother. So there is a companion novel to this, and I heard that one's like way better than this one, but I don't know if I'm gonna even like entertain that. I think I might just, I don't know. Let me know if you've read it. It's called Right Here by Liz Tomford. Let me know if you've read that. Maybe I'll give it a try, but honestly I don't know because I did not like that book. The next book I read in May was Happy Place by Emily Henry. And I know like everyone read this like immediately when it came out, so you've probably heard a bunch of reviews on this already because I'm late. You need to read this immediately. I've read every book by Emily Henry, and I would say my favorite is Beach Read, but I read that like 2 years ago, so I don't know if it still stands as my favorite. This might be my favorite, but I'm gonna read Beach Read this month. I'm gonna reread it so that I can decide which one's my favorite. But this book, I loved it so much. I know overall like everyone liked it, but a lot of people were upset about the miscommunication trope in this book. But I don't know, I wasn't that bothered by it. I was a little frustrated and I was definitely feeling things. But my thing is like if Emily Henry makes you feel all the emotions, and if her writing's gonna make me feel a little frustrated, I'm not that bothered by it. At least I'm feeling something. I'm gonna be kind of quick about explaining this, but this is about a couple that breaks up their engagement and doesn't really tell their friend group, and they kind of like fake date. It's not just about a romance. It's basically, it follows this girl named Harriet, and she meets these two girls when she's in college, so she like forms a really close-knit group of friends with them. It's kind of about her relationship with her friends, and finished college and they like all moved apart. When she initially meets them, their first summer together, they spend a summer at Sabrina's parents' summer home, like a beach home in Maine, and they continue to do that every summer. There's this boy named Wynn, and he's also a part of the friend group, but Harriet hasn't met him yet until I think it was like the second or third summer she went to the beach house. They become friends. They like are sharing a room together, not sharing a bed together. They share a room together that has 2 beds in it. They find themselves staying up all night talking to each other, and slowly their relationship progresses. They spend like that whole trip together. That whole group of friends like ends up moving in with each other, so they spend a lot of time together. They become roommates, and slowly but surely they grow feelings for each other, and they don't really tell anyone in the friend group. Eventually they do, and they become a couple and they get engaged, etc. Like literally like 8 to 10 years goes by of them being together, and they're engaged, and you find out that they're no longer engaged and they're not on speaking terms, and they've been kind of broken up for 2 months or so. But it's summertime, so Harriet is going to the beach house to spend the summer with her friends like she has all these past summers. But the thing is, Sabrina's parents are selling the beach house, so this is the last summer they're all going to be together at this beach house. So she doesn't expect Wynn to be there because, like I said, they're broken up. They haven't talked to each other in a few months, but no one knows that. No one in her friend group knows that. Not even like her family knows that, and not even his family knows. So they're like, we have a surprise for you. Her friends, lo and behold, Wynn is there, and that is their surprise because her friends thought they were just in like a long distance relationship, and they thought it would be great to surprise her with him because they think they haven't seen each other in a bit and they want all of them to be together for the last summer at the beach house. So as you can imagine, Wynn and Harriet are in a predicament, and they don't want to ruin this week because it's the last time they'll all be together at this house, and it's supposed to be very special. So they decide to like fake date, and they don't want to tell their friends that they're not engaged anymore and they're broken up. So there is like a bit of a fake dating trope in this book. And then another thing, they like never got closure with each other, so like I said, there's a miscommunication trope. Then you also get 2 timelines within this book. So you're getting the present time where they're like fake dating and they're broken up, and then you're getting the past timeline when they initially met and how their relationship progressed. I loved it so much. And this book isn't just about like romance. It's really just like about relationships and even just friendships and kind of growing up with your friends and adulting and figuring out what you really want in life and like what makes you happy. I loved it so much. I gave it 5 stars. So this is like probably my 3rd or 4th 5-star read of the year so far. Honestly, maybe less than that, but this book actually made me cry. Yeah, I don't know. I was, like I said, it's really hard for me to cry, but I felt so connected to the characters. It was also the week of my period, so like I was definitely feeling things a little deeper than I normally do. Yeah, I cried and it was good. Since it's called Happy Place, and like Emily Henry's other books are like pretty, I would say like a lighthearted, but this one was, I would say this is like probably her first book that she's ever released that was like really heartbreaking and sad in a way. So don't go into this thinking it's like a fun romance, because it's not. It's way deeper than that. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say. If you haven't read this already, I highly recommend it. I loved it so much. The next book I read in May was All the Things We Leave Unfinished by Rebecca Yarros. This is a romance, and it's so weird. It's like a book within a book, and it's also 2 different timelines and 2 different romances. So it's kind of hard to explain, but I'm gonna do my best. As you know, I'm not the most amazing person at explaining things, so bear with me. Initially, you get the point of view from Georgia. Georgia's about in her late 20s, and recently her grandmother passed away, and her grandmother was everything to her. It was probably like her closest family member. She basically raised her. Her grandma passes away, and the grandma leaves everything to the granddaughter, like her house, money, etc. But one of the main things you need to know is that the grandmother was an author. She was a romance author. So Georgia finds herself going back to her grandma's, where her grandma's house is, kind of like the town she grew up in, to kind of handle everything that just happened, like her grandma passing away. So she shows up to the hometown, and she runs into this man in a bookstore, because she's at the bookstore in the hometown because she always stops in to like look at her grandma's work. She stops in at the bookstore and she runs into this man, and he's on the phone with someone, and he's kind of being really obnoxious, and she immediately gets a bad impression of him. The reason I'm explaining that is because the guy she runs into ends up being the guy within her romance. When I was saying that there's 2 different romances within this book, you're basically getting the present time Georgia forming a romance with this guy, and then you're getting the romance of the grandmother, her romance with this man she meets during World War II. So does that make sense? You're getting the present time romance with Georgia, the granddaughter, and this guy, and then you're getting the romance of the grandmother years and years ago when she was working during World War II and she meets a pilot. The reason all these people are connected, obviously Georgia and her grandmother, but the guy she runs into in the bookstore, also an author, and he is hired by Georgia's mother to finish one of the grandmother's romance novels that she didn't finish before she passed away. But the thing is, the so-called novel that she didn't finish was the love story between her and the man she met during World War II. It's her love story with him that actually happened. So she never finished that book because something tragic happened to the man that she was with. The name of the grandmother is the one that passed away. Her name is Scarlett, and the man she falls in love with, his name is Jameson. Georgia forms a relationship with the author that is finishing this book that the grandmother left. And like I said, the book is literally about Scarlett and Jameson's love story. So it is it's like a real love story that happened, and he has to finish the book. And initially Georgia does not want this book being touched. She's like, my grandma didn't finish it for a reason, no one will be able to finish it. But she ends up agreeing to let him finish it because Georgia ends up finding out that Noah is a huge fan of her grandmother. He actually became an author because of her grandmother's writing, so he's a huge fan. He's quite literally probably the only one that would be able to finish the book in a way that Georgia would like, so she agrees to it, and he ends up spending time at the house with her so that he can finish the book. But yeah, I would say my favorite part of this book was the other timeline where you're reading about the grandmother Scarlett and her love story with Jameson. I was so much more invested in their romance than Georgia and Noah's romance. But overall, I really loved this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. I was thinking about giving it 5 stars, but it just didn't give me that 5-star feeling, but it was still so good. So this was 4.5 stars. So I wrote in my journal, I wrote beautiful, heartbreaking, like nothing I've ever read before. Because like I said, this book is like a book within a book. You'll find out when you read it. I hope you read it. I highly suggest you read it. Also, there was like multiple endings, and you get point of view from all the characters. You get point of view from Georgia, you get point of view from Noah, you get point of view from Scarlett, the grandmother, and Jameson. So I really loved how you got point of view from everyone. It really made me feel connected to the characters. And I read this book, made me believe in fate. It really did. It was a beautiful love story, but very heartbreaking, but very good. So the next book I read is Pride and Prejudice, and this was on my TBR for May. And the reason I decided to read this is because that book I was just talking about, All the Things We Leave Unfinished, they actually referenced Pride and Prejudice in that book. So I was like, okay, well now here's my sign to read it, because I've been putting it off. I don't know if a lot of you have read this, but this is like one of the most classic romance novels of all time. It was written in like 1817 or 1813, I can't remember, but this book was so difficult for me to read because of the way they wrote back then, and it was just really hard to comprehend. So this book is broken up into like 3 different volumes, and after every like volume I had to like look up like the analysis of it, because it just helped me understand the storyline better. The writing is pretty hard to digest. Overall, I gave this book 3 stars. I was expecting more romance, but in my opinion it was way more like a rom-dram. Like, it was very drama filled. It follows this family, and there's a bunch of like daughters within this family, one of the main daughters being Jane. I would say this book was like more of a drama. It was like really drama filled, because it was about like all the daughters within the family trying to find husbands, because you were very looked down upon if you didn't marry back during that time, and if you didn't have a husband that had money and was successful, etc. But I was expecting more of a romance between Jane and Mr. Darcy. I just feel like I didn't get enough of that. But overall, I can see why this is like the blueprint for enemies to lovers, because Mr. Darcy and Jane pretty much despise each other for a good majority of this book, but it really was just a misunderstanding. But yeah, it was fine. I just expected more romance, I think, and again, it was really hard to digest, so I couldn't really connect to the characters that well. I didn't get really invested till volume 3, which was like, I was already 2/3 of the way done with the book. So overall, decent. I feel like if I read it again, I would enjoy it more, because like I said, it was challenging first time around, but overall, decent. Now we're at the final book I read in May. This is In a Jam by Kate Canterbury. I can't remember if this was on my TBR, but I did include this in my big book haul video I posted. So I've been wanting to read this for a minute. This is a small town romance book, and it follows this girl named Shay, and she basically has to move back to the town she grew up in because her grandma passes away and leave this house to her and this like tulip farm to Shay. And she's a teacher and she already has like roots somewhere else, but she says fuck it, and she's like, I'm just gonna go spend a year or like a summer at the house and then decide what I want to do with the house, because her grandma left it to her and she kind of wants to do that for her grandmother. So she ends up going, and she runs into this guy named Noah who she used to be friends with in high school. So it's not a second chance. They were friends, but he was in love with her, but she never felt the same about him. And yeah, she runs into him and their relationship progresses. I wouldn't say this is a slow burn, no. This is a small town romance. There is a single parent trope. Usually I don't mind when there's children in books, but I will admit I was kind of annoyed by the child in this book. I just felt like it was a big part of the story and it was kind of like overshadowing, like, I don't know, it was just a little too much for me and I found myself getting annoyed. I think it was really hard for me to get into the book and get invested into the relationship. I thought it would have been more enjoyable if we got dual timelines, because like I said, they were friends in high school and had a friendship while they were in high school years ago. So I feel like if we had insight into their initial relationship or friendship, it would have made me I would have been more invested in their romance, if that makes sense. So I gave this 3 stars. It was okay. Nothing crazy, nothing groundbreaking, but if you like small town romances, give it a shot, I guess. Okay, so those are all the books I read in May. Overall, a pretty good reading month for me, if I'm being honest. Like I said, I'm not gonna go over my June TBR because I don't know what I'm gonna read this month, and I don't really want to give myself any expectations. But I am gonna give you a little haul. So I bought a couple more books because I'm addicted. First book I bought is Practice Makes Perfect by Sarah Adams. I think this is a companion novel to When in Rome, I think it's called, but you don't have to read that book to read this book. But everyone and their mom has been posting about this. It's giving good girl, bad boy trope, classic. Everyone's been talking about it and has enjoyed it, so I honestly was getting FOMO, so I decided to pick it up. Okay, and then I thought I ordered the second book in the Magnolia Parks Daisy Hates world, but I ordered the 4th book instead of the 2nd book. So this is what that is, and I didn't want to return it because I'm like, I'm gonna order it eventually. So I have the 4th book in the Magnolia Park series. And ordered the 2nd book, which that's what I thought I was ordering. Ordered the 2nd book. I may or may not have just started this a couple days ago. So I'm going to need to buy the 3rd book because now that's the only one I'm missing. But then I obviously bought Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. Everyone's talking about this. This just came out. It's a romance. Workplace romance, I believe. I'm excited to read it. And then the last book I bought recently is The Love Wager by Lynn Painter. Most of you probably know her from Better Than the Movies, that book. That's like a YA romance, but this is one of her adult romance books. Everyone's been raving about her writing, and I know she like puts Taylor Swift lyrics or references within her books, and I love Taylor Swift, and I just wanted to pick it up. I'm excited to read it. Let me know if you've read it, or let me know if you've read anything else by her. So this is the end of my video. Sorry I kind of took a minute to get this up, but thank you so much for listening to me talk about all the books I read in May. Let me know what your favorite book was that you read in May, and hopefully I will post again before the end of June, but who knows. I'm a busy gal. Thank you so much for watching and listening to me ramble. It means a lot.